Welcome back to This is a Commander channel, where this is a Commander channel, and today I'm going to chat about Commander topics, episode 1. This is the first episode in a new series for the channel. I'm open to input on a better name if anyone has any ideas, but the general idea for the series is covering topics in the Commander format, from hot button debates to swings in the meta to all sorts of other kind of topics. I'm going to start this series with the subject of treasure tokens, seeing as how they're everywhere now. A ton of commanders are based around them, and just about every new card seems to be making them, so I thought that would be a good place to start. So how to deal with this influx of treasures? This is a tricky situation as it's similar to graveyard hate. A lot of decks abuse graveyards, and it makes sense to run cards like Leyline of the Void and Rest in Peace to stop that abuse. But for me personally, I don't like to completely shut down graveyard effects. I still want them to be able to do their own thing, but I do need to slow them down a bit. They can't go completely unchecked, so I like to use one-off type of hate towards graveyards. I don't, however, feel the same way about a lot of the recent treasure stuff, seeing as how it's just abusing the mana ramp qualities of treasures. So here are a few cards that you can run if treasure-making shenanigans are getting out of control in your local meta at your LGSs. Let's start off this list with an old card from Visions, back when Magic had enchant worlds, Eye of Singularity. This list is going to have a lot of older cards, so I'm going to be reading their Oracle text, which is their most modern version, which means the text you'll see on the physical cards is going to be a bit different for some of them. Eye of Singularity says, when Eye of Singularity enters the battlefield, destroy each permanent with the same name as another permanent except for basic lands. They can't be regenerated. And then it also has, whenever a permanent other than basic land enters the battlefield, destroy all other permanents with that name. They can't be regenerated. So pay close attention to that first part. It says destroy each permanent with the same name as another permanent, which means if there are 2 or more soul rings out when it enters the battlefield, it will destroy all of them for all players. This also applies to non-basic lands, so be careful there. But most importantly, to our singleton format of Commander, all tokens that have at least one other similar token on the battlefield will get destroyed when this enters. As for future cards and tokens that are entering the battlefield, it will only destroy the others that share the name. So if an opponent is making just one treasure at a time, then they can still abuse them by sacrificing them for mana beforehand, but this will at least help to keep them from using things like Smothering Tithe and amassing treasures as they wait to get back to their turn. Leyline of Singularity is a more modern version of Eye of Singularity, and it is a blue enchantment that says all non-land permanents are legendary. Well, treasure tokens are non-land permanents, so that means that once this static effect hits the field, each player will have to send to their graveyard all but one of their treasure tokens. They can respond to this while it's on the stack, but once it is out, if an opponent casts something like a Dockside Extortionist that makes multiple treasures all at once, they will not have a chance to sacrifice all but one of those treasure tokens. That's just not how the legend rule works. Let's go back to the really early days of Magic again with the card Tatiana's Song, which says each non-creature artifact loses all abilities and becomes an artifact creature with power and toughness, each equal to its mana value. If Tatiana's Song leaves the battlefield, this effect continues until end of turn. This is another static effect that will end up killing off all of the treasure tokens in play, as treasures have a mana value of 0, and therefore they will have a toughness of 0. Some players might have them stick around if they have an Anthem effect out that is boosting their toughness, but if that's the case, this Tatiana Song will still remove their mana-making ability from them. And now to go to a bit more modern time period of Magic again with March of the Machines, which is almost the same thing as Tatiana's Song, but not as good, as it doesn't have the part that removes their abilities in cases where they stick around with an anthem. But again, it'll still kill off most of them, setting their toughness to 0. Okay, let's go back to 1994 one more time with a card called Haunting Wind, which says whenever an artifact becomes tapped or a player activates a artifact's ability without tap in its activation cost, Haunting Wind deals 1 damage to that artifact's controller. This is yet another card that will punish players for doing a lot of things with non-token artifacts, but will really punish those players making a ton of treasure tokens and abusing them. Heck, it will even punish players making gold tokens. Getting back to a more modern time of Magic, Disciple of the Vault is a fantastic way to let you pick who gets punished. You'll likely want to punish the player who's abusing the treasures, but this creature just cares about any artifacts going to the graveyard, yours as well as any opponent's. Did a player just play a Vandal Blast overloaded? This creature could just straight up kill an opponent. Even if this disciple dies at the same time as the treasures and other artifacts, like if someone casts an austere command, picking the 3 or less creatures mode and the artifacts mode, the disciple will see all those artifacts dying with him, and you will still get those target opponent loses 1 life triggers to punish someone. And now we're heading to 1 year after the release of Eye of Singularity. Now we're in 1997 for the card Ancient Runes. This card is another punish effect. Like the Disciple, it will not shut off the treasures, but it will make your opponents scared to make a lot of them, or at least keep them around for use on their turn. I personally run this card in my Torbran deck, as I like to run a lot of stuff that at least ends up dealing 3 damage to my opponents on their turns, and it's hard to find a game, even pre-Treasure Token Insanity, that this card wouldn't trigger on an opponent's turn at least for 1 damage. But if someone has out a Smothering Tithe and no way to use that mana at instant speed before getting to their turn, they will take a ton of damage to save those treasures for their sorceries, creatures, enchantments, and other artifacts. So, nice damage there. Now for some one-time use cards that can surprise your opponents. This first one is a bit less of a surprise because it is a sorcery. You'll have to play it on your turn. But Echoing Ruin can be a one-time use effect similar to Eye of Singularity. You can also use it in other cases, like a bunch of your opponents all having their turn 1 Soul Rings, or you can really mess up the Osgir player. But if someone makes a ton of treasures and we do get to your turn, you can cast this to take all of them out for just 2 mana. And of course, blue sort of one-ups red here because its Echoing card is an instant, giving it a bit more flexibility, and that card is Echoing Truth. Again, it can have other uses to just return like a Blightsteel Colossus that someone sends at you. But if someone is going bonkers with treasure tokens or even creature tokens, then you can use this card to save the day. And for the final card I'm going to talk about in this video is Viridian Revel, which is probably the most talked about card in all of the recent what to do to fight against treasures talk. I saved it for last as it doesn't stop or punish your opponents for their treasures, but it just gives you a ton of value for when they do use them. Also, since it's the most talked about card on the list, I figured I'd just at least still put it in here at the end, just in case some of you have missed out on those talks. Anyhow, that's all I've got for this first episode of Commander Chats. Please give me a better name for this series, or at least let me know if you like this one. I've got more ideas for talking points for future episodes, but feel free to join me in chatting about this topic in the comments, and also suggesting future topics to chat about. Have a good one. Ta-ta.